You're tuning in to the Black Hollywood Live Network, featuring news, interviews, and commentary on all things Black Hollywood. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is Black Hollywood Live. Justice is served. Featuring the week's roundup and commentary on legal news. Black Hollywood Live. Hollywood redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host for Black Hollywood Live, Justice is Served.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Justice is Served, where we bring you the latest and trending legal news on a weekly basis here on Black Hollywood Live. My name is Sara Azari. I'm a criminal defense attorney and a host here on Justice is Served. And today I'm joined by my partner in crime, attorney and co-host, Chelsea Galicia. Hey, Chelsea.
Hi there.
All right, before we kick off the show, I want to ask all our viewers to stay with us through the duration of this show. We're going to be discussing Rachel Dolezal's race-faking scandal, the murderers on the loose in upstate New York with the help of a prison employee, the obscure Ohio law allowing citizens to essentially petition the court for the arrest of the officers in the Tamir Rice shooting death, as well as medical marijuana, which according to the Colorado Supreme Court, may cost you your job. So let's get started, Chelsea, with our case of the week, which is all about Rachel Dolezal, the president of the NAACP's Spokane, Washington chapter, who recently resigned from her position after her parents last week blew her covers and went on the media, and this went viral all over social media, stating that she is white, they are white, everybody's Caucasian. In fact, there's maybe 10% Native American in her blood, but that's about it. They can't understand why she's gone on for so many years denying her true ethnicity, or race, I should say, and has pretended to be African American when she in fact isn't. And you know, obviously the dynamics in this family is a little skewed. I think the parents are estranged, and they had no qualms about telling the truth about Rachel's true race, the fact that she's white. In fact, she's from Montana. She's 37 years old, and she went to a very black college, Howard University. She studied African American, I think studies was her major, and she's very much academically involved in the civil rights area. She has been a teacher in the Washington area in college teaching African American studies, and she has apparently done a fantastic job in the course of her work for the NAACP, which is the largest and oldest civil rights organization in the nation. So it's a significant job that she's had specifically in this area in Spokane, Washington, which is 90% white, 10%, actually 2% black. And according to some of the leaders in her chapter, she has done amazing work for this organization. And so, Chelsea, you know, what's interesting to me is the length to which she's gone to pretend like she's black when she's not. She had come up with a story about her father being a black cop and escaping the South. Her father's white and he was not a cop. And really sort of, it's not just about curling her hair and changing the color of her skin. She's gone through to great lengths to pretend as though she's African American. And so yesterday, in an interview with Matt Lauer on the Today show, she claimed, when she was asked, you know, what are you? She said, I identify as black. So it's the first time she uses the word identify as opposed to I am, right? So my question to you, Chelsea, is, look, Bruce Jenner woke up one day and it was like, hello, Caitlyn. Why can't this woman choose to African American, if that's what she chooses to do?
Well, even though Caitlyn was born to us in a day, I think if you heard Bruce's story, he's always felt like a woman, and perhaps this isn't fair. You do get to maybe choose your sex, but you don't get to choose your race. I think people are a little turned off by the fact, well, like, if you're really black, you can't just decide to be white. There's no way that you can pass as white no matter, you know, what you try and do. Even Michael Jackson, who people say tried to pass as white, was obviously unsuccessful because we all knew that he wasn't. So I'm not... The whole part about, is it really a choice? I don't know. That's less important to me than like the deception. Right. And at first I thought, well, maybe she was doing it because she didn't think that she could do this type of work and be an advocate for this community if she wasn't Black. And that's why she said she let people think she was, and then just never corrected them, and that she referred to a man, a Black man, as her dad, and pointed out to Matt Lauer that a father is not necessarily the same as a dad, that she thinks this man is her dad in terms of raising her and who she looks up to and who looks out for her. So she's just... I don't want to say done a good job, but she's just done a good job of avoiding somehow the subject long enough until this reporter just showed up in her face one day and sort of caused this to come out. But people don't want to be lied to. And it looks like, if you look at the NAACP's record, they have a lot of white people working for the organization and successfully being able to advocate. So she may have been a stronger ally had she just
been truthful.
Right.
And I agree with you, but I think that it's not... this is the part I disagree with. I don't think that she's just kind of denied and skidded around her race. I think she's flat out lied about being Black. She was married to a Black man. She on applications, she claimed she was Black. There was an application for her to be on the sort of the police commission in her area, and she lied about being Black on that application, and I think it is about the deception, and a lot of the African Americans in the NAACP are they feel betrayed by her because they feel like she is going around and despite all the great stuff she's done, okay, and the fact that you don't have to be a person of color to lead in the NAACP or be a member of NAACP, but the fact of the matter is that she is never really suffered the consequences of being a Black woman in racist America. She grew up in Montana, blonde, blue-eyed, white little girl, and I'm sure that's a different life than had she been African American. And so a lot of African Americans are angry that she is now benefiting from this sort of being in the limelight as the leader of the NAACP chapter without really having, lived what it's like to be a Black woman. But I think she's... I think one of the reasons she probably, her parents say that she started associating or identifying as African American, or there was some signs of it around the age of 7. So that early on, and then it sort of progressed, and then it definitely in college when she was in a primarily Black university studying.
Well, even before that, her parents had adopted Black children, right. So she had Black siblings in her teenage years.
So it's like even in her immediate household. So, but I think that ultimately, being that she's an activist and that she's in academics, that world sort of lends itself. Being a Black woman, I think, is a lot more attractive in that world. Being Black in general is looked at sort of the stronger, wiser, natural persona, and I think that it was easier for her, and it was more suitable to her world, essentially, to be Black. And like you said, if she grew up with siblings and she essentially lived the culture, that's who she, and again, I think it's, she should have been honest about it. I think that's what's really costing her all this attention and perhaps taking away from.
And even yesterday on the Today Show, she had an opportunity to say, look, I know I'm white. I'm fully aware of that. I acknowledge that. When I was asked, are you Black, I should have said in that moment, are you asking if I racially white, or do I culturally and identity-wise identify with the Black experience? But instead, she just said, I don't understand this question, as though it was some vague and ambiguous question. She knew exactly what the guy was asking.
It's like Clinton-esque, right? Bill Clinton with the whole, what is intercourse, or what was sex, or whatever.
So maybe she didn't think that she had a right to choose her, culture, and that she would have had to be white if everybody knew that she was white, because white people get made fun of when they try and be act black, being called a wigger and things of that nature. So maybe she was afraid of being alienated from the community that she wanted to associate with, although she could have just been honest about it when she was really asked. So I was looking for every reason to try and defend her. Maybe because I thought, if she's done great work and she really believes in the cause and she really identifies with the experience. I mean, you don't have to be black to acknowledge and understand the experience. I can't understand it the same as if I had been, racially profiled or something like that, but I can, as best as human empathy allows me to, understand and sympathize with that feeling and try and be an advocate for its change without ever becoming
But
black.
I think, and we've talked about this on previous shows, we all have, as Americans, this sort of underlying, even if it's just a tiny little bit of racial bias. And I have to wonder whether she would have gone so far and been so successful in her field had it been known that she is, in fact, not African American.
And that's what I thought.
And I think that's the fear she probably had.
But I think there are other white leaders, presidents even, of NAACP chapters.
Right.
So when I learned that, I was a little less sympathetic to that argument.
And so we want to hear from our audience. Does an activist and a voice for the people of color necessarily have to be of color to do their job right and for people to have confidence in what they're doing for the community? We want to hear from you, so please tweet us at Azari Law and at Chelsea Galicia. And I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea for an announcement that we have and as well as on the docket.
Yes, so while we're asking for your opinion, we would like your opinion about this show in general. So we're asking that you go to podcast1.com, and the one in the podcast one is spelled out ONE, so that we can get feedback from you about what you think about this show, how we can serve you better, hear your thoughts, learn who you are. So again, please go to podcast1.com and fill out this survey. We really value your feedback as always, and especially with this survey, we would really appreciate you taking I think it's all 3 minutes it would take for you to go and complete this survey. So head on over to do that. We'll wait. Okay, maybe not. Well, you can pause us and then come back. But really, please do fill out that survey. We really do look at it. It really does matter to us as we're trying to bring you the best show possible. All right, so back to the show. We're going to do our On the Dot. Now, we're starting with the case of a prison break. So it has now been 1 week since 2 murderers escaped from a New York prison. It turns out that they didn't escape alone, that a prison employee named Joyce Mitchell helped them out. Apparently, they had developed a friendship with this lady, although I'm reading now that with one of the men, she may have had a sexual relationship that occurred in the Taylor part of the correctional facility. So somehow this friendship, potentially turned romantic relationship, became a relationship where she thought she would help them escape, and she provided them tools, power tools, in fact, so that they can escape. They escaped by digging through a cell wall and then out a manhole. She has been charged with a felony, promoting prison contraband, and a misdemeanor charge of criminal facilitation for providing tools and assistance. I can't believe there's not an actual felony for aiding in the
escape of murderers from prison. Yeah.
Okay. And if she's convicted of these, she faces up to 8 years. So she's now been cooperative. Apparently, she's not even taking advantage of her right to have an attorney present. She's willfully, freely speaking to investigators. And so every day new details come out. Today, there was a detail about the fact that this woman's husband, who also worked at the prison, was maybe the subject of a plot to be killed, part of this escape plan. The escape plan at some point also included Joyce Mitchell, being the driver, the getaway driver, and apparently she had a change of heart at the last minute. So as of now, nearly 1,000 state, local, and federal law enforcement officials have been out looking for these 2 men. The coverage area that they're looking is widening. It's been a week. This is, a massive manhunt. Do you think that the length of time that it takes and the expense that it costs will make a difference to her, and her cooperation with the investigation will make a difference to what happens in the prosecution against her, or it doesn't matter.
I absolutely think I don't think the length of the investigation and the resources that it has cost is going to ultimately make a difference for Joyce Mitchell. But I think definitely her cooperation will help her if it's going to produce something fruitful for law enforcement. So in this case, what I read was that usually in that area in New York, within 24 hours they apprehend prison escapees. In this case, it's well over 24 hours. It's a week now that they're gone. But apparently, her phone was used to make some calls around the time of the escape, and the calls were made to one of the inmates, Richard Matt's friends or family, people that were associated with him. And so there is hope that because of her alleged relationship with them and the fact that he used her phone, that this is going to lead law enforcement into an area beyond where they've searched to hopefully try to look at it. As more time goes by, to me, it's less likely that these guys are going to get caught anytime soon. They came close. At some point, they did a smell test, and near a Subway sandwich shop, they found wrappers from the prison commissary, which indicated that these guys may have been there with no money in their pocket. They weren't about to get a Subway sandwich, but they may have been rummaging through the trash there for food. But the bottom line is they weren't there. They're not around, and who knows when they're going to be found.
So if they are not found, you think she'll spend the same amount of time in prison if they are?
Well, it depends on the laws of New York. In federal cases, or even in local cases here in Los Angeles and California, if the cooperation is going to earn the defendant some kind of lenience in terms of their sentence or something, or the charge, it has to actually lead to the apprehension and arrest of somebody out there on the loose, somebody that the government doesn't already know about, or they know about and they don't know where to find the person. Once they arrest that person and charge them, and you're all in when you're cooperating. You can't be half pregnant. And so if you're cooperating, then you're also agreeing to testify at trial against that person. And a lot of defendants are skittish about that. They're afraid of that, rightfully so, because their safety is at issue. To show up to court and snitch and be an informant, roll on somebody is not a safe thing for most defendants to do. And so ultimately, I don't know to give you a straight answer what the laws in New York and in this county, whether she has to actually lead to their arrest for her to get something, or does her attempt and the fact that she's being credible and honest and candid with law enforcement, doing everything she possibly can to try to locate these guys. Maybe one of the things I was thinking about is one of the things that if they haven't done with her, that they could do with her, is to set up a fake call, which police often do. If she had some kind of a love relationship with inmate Matt, maybe she can send a nice, loving text and get him to talk to her and set up a rendezvous, and that's how they can get to him. But I think these guys are smarter than that. There are no way, now that they're out, I don't think they're going to continue a relationship with a prison employee.
Right.
So
especially if she decided last minute, I'm not going to be your getaway driver, and that probably threw a wrench in the plan.
Now she's an enemy because she's
But
with
I
the
think
prison.
that the idea of a fear that these two murderers are out on the loose will make jurors more likely to punish her more harshly than if they're caught. So even if her actions are the same, if they don't get caught, there's more fear in the minds of the community, of the jurors. And so I think that she better, she's hoping and praying, I think, more than almost all of us, that they get found, because I think that she'll probably end up in jail longer.
Right.
If they don't find him.
Right.
So
can't be longer than 8 years, though. That's the max, right?
But that's insane that there's no actual law for helping people escape jail.
Well, yeah, and then I was thinking that once these two are apprehended and brought back to prison, how much longer are they going to do? They're murderers, so if they're in for murder, they're at least there for life without parole. this is not a capital crime.
I guess
so they're
they had
certainly not
nothing
going
to
to get.
lose.
They're not going to get death row. They're not going to get death sentence. So I don't know. I mean, they're probably just going to be brought back, and that's the end of it. Maybe in a higher security prison or cell. But anyway.
Okay, so here is a follow-up to a story that we started covering since it occurred back in November. You'll remember the case of Tamir Rice. He was a 12-year-old boy that was playing in the park with a gun. Somebody noticed that he was, called the police, and said, this kid looks like to be a kid, is playing with a gun. The police show up, and before even the car is stopped, police shoot and kill him. And this is the case where the sister comes up a few minutes later and is like, oh my God, they shot my brother. And then she's treated like a criminal. And as of now, there have been no charges been brought. Doesn't look like anything's happened. But there is a law in Ohio that allows citizens who are knowledgeable of the facts to file an affidavit with the court and ask them to find probable cause. There's a little bit of confusion about whether that law can be used to file charges or just to get a judge's opinion. But the interesting part is that affidavit was filed and the judge said, yes, there's probable cause for murder, involuntary manslaughter, reckless homicide, dereliction of duty. So yes, there's probable cause, but there's really nothing that this means. It's really just a nice opinion. I have no authority to do anything with this unless prosecutors file charges.
Well, he doesn't have the authority to order their arrest. So what good is finding probable cause where you cannot bring the culprits to justice?
That was going to be my question. Is this just a feel-good, great law to have, but it doesn't make a difference?
I think it's giving the citizens of Cleveland some sort of reprieve to know that a judge is siding with them. And, this was such an outrageous case as you described. I think that it's some sense, it's giving some people a sense of peace that at least a judge is seeing through this and finds both of these officers to have been criminally culpable. But now the onus is on the prosecutor. The judge said, okay, you need to file the complaint, and then be able to arrest the officers. And the district attorney for this county has replied that, as with all cases of police brutality and use of force, we're going to submit this for grand jury indictment. And, I believe in the grand jury system, but I have to say that it's a real weak move for a prosecutor because he doesn't want the responsibility. He doesn't want to be the one, even though the one can have a lot of influence, as we know in Ferguson and other cases, on the grand jury because the prosecutor is wearing the hat of both prosecutor and defense attorney. He doesn't want to be able to walk away with he doesn't want to be able to walk away with a decision that is going to haunt him either way. And so it's easier to say, hey, I submitted it to grand jury. If they came back with a no bill, they did it. But even though we know that he can influence the grand jury.
But now with the judge saying it, if you don't, you look like a schmuck. It is your job to bring charges. And I don't even know how they were able to get an opinion like this. Most courts, you can't just get an advice from a judge. Like, is there? You have to bring charges first and then judges decide. Like, you can't go to the Supreme Court when you're thinking of a new law and say, hey, is this going to pass constitutional muster? They don't issue those kinds of opinions. They only hear real cases. So it's interesting that they would have this. But it would almost be like, he has to do something with this. I don't know what's taking the grand jury process so long. Is it, in your experience?
It hasn't been submitted to grand jury.
So it's November and now we're in June.
He's now going to submit it to grand jury because, listen, I think that's one thing that's accomplished by this judge's ruling is that now there's pressure for either the prosecution to file a complaint or submit the case to grand jury. So at least now we're going to see the case being officially reviewed for indictment.
Right. It's hard to ignore it now.
Yeah. It's up. It's brought back up into the forefront of the news there. So, we also want to hear from our viewers on this. Please tweet us and share your thoughts with us. Chelsea can be tweeted at
Chelsea Galicia
and at Azari Law.
All right. So now, a marijuana law, legal in Colorado, not even just medical, but for recreational use. But a quadriplegic man, a guy named Brandon Coates, who at the age of 16 was a passenger in a car accident. The car hit a tree. He's been a quadriplegic since. He's got terrible spasms and pain as a result of that. He used traditional medication for a long time until the effects started to wane and it wasn't providing him much relief anymore. When medical marijuana became an option, his doctor recommended that to him. He's been on the state registry of medical marijuana users, and he was fired from his job at Dish Network. So the question in that case was, can you
he was fired for testing dirty.
Right.
So he had THC in his system.
Right. So they did what they said was a random drug test, and it turned out positive. There is no indication, there was no argument that the marijuana had any impairment on his work performance. In reality, he was a good employee who got great performance reviews. There were no complaints about him. The only issue was whether he had it in his system at all, because their policy, which was interesting, it says, to ensure a safe and productive work environment, they reserve their right to do drug testing. So if the drug testing is for safety and productivity, and there's no safety issues with his use of medical marijuana, he's not operating a machine or something, he's a telephone operator. His productivity apparently has been just fine. He's gotten great performance reviews. He's fired anyway once they find that he's using THC at work, just because while he's at work it shows up in his system on a drug test. He's fired for it. He sues, and now the Colorado Supreme Court has sided with Dish after sitting on this for a year, that because he was doing an activity that was legal in the state of Colorado but not legal federally, that he wasn't protected by the this exception where if you're doing a lawful activity, you can't be fired for it. I'm sort of appalled by this decision. Can you make sense of this, or are you left
yes and
scratching your head?
No, I think yes and no. I mean, I think most employers have zero tolerance for dirty drug tests. It's very hard to know that, somebody has a drug in their system. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Do a quantitative lab test on every employee who tests dirty to see how much of it was used? And there's no way to know.
They didn't even care about that. It was that it showed up at all.
That's why, because they can't care about that. There's no way for them to know somebody who used marijuana a week or 2 weeks ago versus someone who used in their car before they walked into the workplace.
But why does it matter if he's got a prescription for it?
Right.
It's legal in that state.
And that's exactly what it is. The problems that we see over and over again with marijuana is this schizophrenia in that world, because federal law makes it illegal. State laws, a lot of states have made it legal. Some period, some only medical. But under federal law, any type of marijuana is illegal. The possession of it, the distribution of it, the growth of it, all of it is illegal. So that's the problem we have.
But is it the job of the Colorado Supreme Court to uphold federal law, or is it their job to uphold
I believe
state law?
It would be state law, but my understanding is that the law regarding the law regarding lawful use is something that under state law perhaps defers to federal law. That is defined, in other words, the term lawful under that statute probably is defined as something that's lawful under all laws of the United States.
But it actually doesn't say that. I looked at the language of the law, unlawful prohibition of legal activities as a condition of employment. Nowhere in there does it even say state and federal.
Federal.
It doesn't say that at all.
Well, this certainly can go up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Which would be fascinating.
Which would be fascinating. And, I'm sure some of our viewers have maybe had some frustrating experiences with this issue. Think about the times where you may have been pulled over and you might have had THC in your system because you're a medical marijuana patient and you smoked marijuana, 3 days before being pulled over. And, and you submit a blood test and the CHP assumes that you're driving under the influence. It's very difficult to prove when the marijuana was ingested, how much of it is in your system. There are some tests that you can do, but ultimately it's not determinative. So we do want to hear from you. Let us know what your thoughts are on this topic because we always would like to tailor the show to the liking of our viewers. And you can tweet me at Azari Law and Chelsea at Chelsea Galicia. And I think this brings us to the close of today's edition of Justice is Served. We thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you right here next week on Justice is Served. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in. The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.